let's consider common network attacks. And one of them, and this is one that you hear about on the news quite a bit, is a denial of service or a DOS attack, or a distributed denial of service, or a DDoS attack, as it's called. But in general, a denial of service attack is where an attacker will overwhelm a victim system with so much traffic that it's so busy dealing with this onslaught of traffic that it's not going to be able to do its regular job. It can basically put it out of service. Remember the spanning tree protocol issue that I told you about that we had at Epcot one time, where we had a broadcast storm? Well, that broadcast storm essentially was a denial of service attack on PCs in the resorts, to the point where sometimes you can't even move the mouse because the PC is so busy dealing with all those broadcasts. But here, let's say that, and there's different ways of launching these DDoS attacks or a DOS attack. But here, let's say that the attacker wants to send a flood of traffic to this victim computer. What they might do is, and this is just one example, they might want to have an entire subnet of machines start flooding that victim with traffic. So what they might do is spoof their IP address. They could lie about what their IP address is, and they could say, well, my address is 192.0.2.123. It's not, but that's the victim's computer. And then they do a ping. Now notice the address of that ping, 198.51.100.255. If you look at that network up at the top, that's the directed broadcast address for that network. There may be 254 devices in that network. They're all receiving these pings coming in, and they're all going to be responding not to the attacker, but to the falsified IP address that the attacker provided. In other words, the victim. And if they did that same type of ping to multiple subnets, that could be a significant amount of traffic that victim is having to deal with. A more damaging type of denial of service attack is a distributed denial of service attack, where it's not just one attacker that's trying to launch an attack. Over time, this attacker, through malware and apps, this is a more long range attack. It's something you're going to execute over time after you have infected computers around the internet. So after you have infected a lot of computers on the internet with this malware, you have essentially at your disposal a botnet. Not you, but an attacker would have at their disposal a botnet, as it's called, of devices. And there's a server that the attacker can have called a command and control server, and they can tell the command and control server, all right, I want you to summon this botnet and tell them to start attacking this destination, this victim's computer. And now this victim is going to be getting flooded potentially from computers around the world, and just overwhelming the system to where it's not able to do anything. A really famous distributed denial of service attack, it was a few years back. It's where Twitter became unavailable, it became unavailable to a large portion of the world. It was called, I think it was called the Mirai attack, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But what the attacker did, they launched a distributed denial of service attack on the DNS provider that Twitter was using, and people trying to go to Twitter couldn't, because the DNS server couldn't respond to say, all right, here's the IP address of Twitter. And the way they did that, the way they executed this attack, is that they went in and were able to control Internet of Things devices that were on the network of people around the world. They got into, and a major way they did this was by using default credentials of these internet devices. I mean, it's getting better now, but used to, if you were to go out and buy a wireless router from Linksys, the password was probably something like Linksys or password. A lot of people just leave the factory default credentials at the factory defaults. Nowadays, vendors are doing a better job about that and giving more unique default credentials. but they were able to, using default credentials, to take over these video surveillance cameras, or just security cameras that people have mounted around their homes. And they were able to get into wireless routers. They were able to get into DVR systems people had hooked up to their TV. And they told all these Internet of Things device. Imagine your light bulb attacking Twitter. That's the kind of thing that was happening here. It's wild. But they were able to get into these Internet of Things devices, and they were saying, all right, send this flood of information to this DNS provider. And when that happened, yeah, it couldn't resolve requests for Twitter, and Twitter was unavailable for a good portion of the world for a good bit of time.